Washington Journal continues.
Joining us now is Peter Montgomery. He is the research director for People for the American Way, here to talk about what we'll see in about a half hour from now, the Attorney General nominee, Pam Bondi. Hello.
Thanks for having me on.
A little bit about your group and organization. What does it do, and how does it relate to days like today when we're watching these hearings play out?
People for the American Way is a national progressive advocacy organization. We are devoted to the idea that the American promise should be real for all people, and we mobilize community leaders and cultural leaders to defend truth, justice, and the American way. And our vision is an America in which our rights and freedoms are protected for everyone, not just the rich and powerful.
And when it comes then to Pam Bondi herself and the possibility of her becoming the Attorney General, what are the concerns?
We have a lot of concerns about the rule of law in this country under the Trump administration, and we have concerns about whether Pam Bondi is willing to defend Americans' safety, rights, and freedoms, and whether she's going to do that or whether she'll be mostly representing Donald Trump, as she has as his personal lawyer, and the corporate interests that she's represented as a lobbyist.
You specifically wrote, when it comes to Pam Bondi, that she's bad news for the rule of law. Give me specifics why.
She's bad news for the rule of law. One step back is that I think the biggest threat to the rule of law in the Trump administration is Donald Trump himself. And in his first term, his worst impulses were held in check by people, including very conservative Republicans who worked for him, who believed that their oath to uphold the Constitution was more important than their personal loyalty to Donald Trump. We're concerned that Pam Bondi's record suggests that she will do and say anything that Trump wants, including going after journalists and lawyers who investigated him, people who were just doing their job. She's threatened to target lawyers at the Justice Department who investigated Trump. She has, she helped Trump spread lies about the 2020 election that he lost. She went to Pennsylvania and made claims about fake ballots and, insisted on national media that Trump had won Pennsylvania and they weren't going to leave until Pennsylvania declared that to be the case. And that just wasn't the case. And that kind of rhetoric has had a lot of negative consequences about people's trust in our elections, to the violence on January 6th. She also has helped Trump try to avoid responsibility for the January 6th by resisting investigations. Since she's been at the America First Policy Institute, where she argued in a legal brief that Jack Smith's appointment as special counsel was unconstitutional. So we're worried that she has tried to help Trump evade accountability, and she's really proven herself to be a personal loyalist. And we're worried that she's more likely to enable his abuses of power rather than prevent them.
She has served as the Attorney General of the state. What do you think about that experience specifically and what she could bring to the role as Attorney General of the nation?
Well, I think it's a very different role, and it's a very different role under Donald Trump, who has made it clear that he's expecting personal loyalty. We do have concerns about her record as Attorney General in Florida, where she fired attorneys who were investigating abusive loan practices that were defrauding people of their homes. She opposed same-sex equality she opposed legal equality for same-sex couples. She tried to overturn the Affordable Care Act. So substantively, we have a lot of concerns with her record there.
This is the political story recently about the meetings that she's been having with various senators on Capitol Hill. Some of the quotes coming from that, well, this is Chris Coons of Delaware of the Senate Judiciary Committee, saying there's no question she has the relevant experience managing one of our nation's largest state Department of Justice. She's been elected twice to be Attorney General. She's managed a very large statewide Attorney General office. Other complimentary comments about her experience as well. Back going into the hearing, are you concerned about what Democrats will ask or at least press of her when it comes to information they want to hear?
I think the hearings are really important for a number of reasons. One, it's in the Constitution. This is an important part of our checks and balances. And I think Democrats will be wanting to talk about both her qualifications and her character. There's no question that she's more qualified than, say, Matt Gaetz, Trump's first choice, with her record as a prosecutor and a state attorney general. We're concerned about whether her personal loyalty to Donald Trump and his stated desire to, push the bounds of what's legal in his efforts to gut the federal government's ability to protect Americans, his efforts to avoid accountability, his pledge to pardon hundreds of January 6 protesters. We're concerned about whether she's going to enable all those things whether she'll be giving Trump advice that protects the American people, or whether she just goes along with what he wants to do with his power.
Our guest is Peter Montgomery. He's with People for the American Way, serves as the research director. And if you want to ask him questions about this hearing with Pam Bondi as she faces questioning from the senators, you can do so on the lines 202-748-8000 for Democrats, 202-748-8001 for Republicans, 202-748-8002 for independents. If you want to text us those thoughts and questions, 202-748-8003. Specifically, what questions would you want to hear asked of her?
I'd like the Senate to ask her what she will do if Trump gives her an illegal order, asks her to do something that clearly violates the Constitution. There have been news reports that Trump's team is specifically planning to declare executive orders and pursue policies that are illegal or unconstitutional under current court rulings, just to see how far they can push the limits. I'd like senators to ask her what her advice will be in that situation, what she'd do in that situation. I'd like them to ask her more about her threat on media to go after Justice Department prosecutors and lawyers who did their jobs in taking part of investigations of Donald Trump. I think those are some of the important questions we'll ask. Again, these hearings are about qualifications, but also about character, about whether someone can be trusted to do the job, to represent the whole American people, and not just the president who's their boss.
What has your organization specifically done in light of this hearing as far as a media campaign and advertising? Otherwise, what are you doing in the lead up to that?
We are putting out information on our Right Wing Watch is a website we have that we put out information about her record. We have mobilized our members to sign petitions to senators. We have sent a letter to senators detailing our concerns and urging them to oppose this confirmation.
Republican senators, Democratic senators, who's involved in that?
I think our letter goes to everybody. I think our letter goes to all the senators. I think that certainly our contacts and our conversations are more likely to be on the Democratic side.
What do you think is the possibility of her getting confirmed by the Judiciary Committee itself?
I think it's probably pretty good because Republicans have not shown a great desire in standing up to Donald Trump. On the other hand, we don't know what's going to come out. And I think that one of the great things about confirmation process is that in some ways it's very transparent. Both Democrats and Republicans get a chance to ask their questions on the record. The nominee answers written questions that senators give that are also released to the public. So it's a little bit hard to guess what might come out, what might sway members of the committee about her intentions and whether she can be trusted to do this job for all the American people and not just for Donald Trump.
This is Peter Montgomery joining us. Our first call is from Dave. Dave is on our independent line. He is from Alabama. You're on with our guest, Dave. Go ahead.
Hey, I like Pam. She's a breath of fresh air compared to this regime we have now, the Biden regime, the loony bin, which is reflected through our media. But it's said that there's so many federal laws now. When you wake up in the morning and open your eyes, you've already violated about 500. We need to clean house. One of the things Trump said in the 2016 debate is that we need to erase. He said 2. I said maybe 10. So when the Congress legislative body passes a new legislation, and it's so complex, but we need to erase 10, get rid of them. I'm also a proponent of streamlining the federal Constitution, started in 1871. We were the U.S. Constitution. So we need a Congress active to do the will of the people to go back and clean this mess up. So Pam Bondi would be a great asset to getting rid of this swamp, and then, of course, the media. So I have.
Okay, Dave, you got the point out. We'll let our guests respond.
I'd say when people talk about the swamp, or people like Pam Bondi talk about the deep state or the administrative state, I think it's important to remind ourselves that what they're talking about is gutting federal agencies whose job it is to protect American workers, communities, and the environment from wrongdoing by corporations. And I think there's a major effort afoot by the Trump administration and the people that are advising him to make it harder for the government to rein in misbehavior, bad behavior by corporations, and to give more power over our lives to unaccountable corporations. And I think that's harmful to Americans. I hope that people will resist that, but I think that is part of the agenda that we're going to see from this administration, and one that will be supported by Pam Bondi.
To the caller's point, how do you think the Justice Department could be reshaped under Pam Bondi?
Well, it's hard to know just how aggressively they're going to be in following through with threats to fire, investigate, prosecute career civil servants in the Justice Department. And I think that they probably have a lot of plans for day one executive orders. One of the things we know that Project 2025 was pushing was that they wanted to eliminate this bipartisan principle that's been held for a long time, that the FBI and the Justice Department decisions about law enforcement prosecutions should be independent from the White House, should be insulated from political pressures. They want to do away with that. They want to basically give Trump virtually dictatorial control over every federal agency, including ones that Americans have traditionally understood to be independent, and that independence is an important check on abuses of power. And so we're worried that that independence could be eliminated.
Here's Mary. Mary is in Maryland, Democrats line. Go ahead.
Yes. Why not just let Trump appoint whoever he wants? Because we're no longer a country of laws, and just let him destroy us like he wants to do. I mean, we elected him knowing all the crimes he had committed, and why not just take the people out of jail and let them run for president?
Well, I think there are a lot of Americans who feel frustration and a little despair. Maybe that's reflected in Mary's question. I think that the country is worth fighting for. The rule of law is worth fighting for. And, Donald Trump, despite talking about getting elected by a landslide, actually won by a very small margin of the of the popular vote. His electoral college vote was nowhere near historic, the way he describes it. So there's a lot of Americans who still want to protect the rule of law and are going to be willing to stand up to this administration when it does things that are harmful to our fellow Americans or to the principles that we rely on.
Republicans would say what you just said and cast it as a mandate. Shouldn't that extend to who the president wants in certain positions?
Sure, the president is able to appoint people, but the Constitution says that there are checks and balances on that. It's the Constitution that gives the Senate this authority to review nominees, to make sure that they're qualified, to make sure they can be trusted to do the job. So Donald Trump is no different than any other president who makes his appointments to the cabinet, and those appointments are subject to review by the U.S. Senate in public confirmation hearings. And I think that it's a great process, and we should all be glad that it's in place.
The room is filling up there at the Senate Judiciary Committee. Again, 9:30, the scheduled start time for this hearing. We'll show you a bit of that room filling up as we hear from Bob. Bob is in Wisconsin, Republican line. Hi.
I just wanted to make a few comments and ask a few questions. Do you believe that Merrick Garland was political and he had weaponized the Department of Justice to go after political rivals like Trump and everybody else in Trump's cabinet? The FBI lied in order to investigate Trump. Don't you think the government has already been politicalized? And they went after Trump, and it's proven. Don't you think that the case against Trump in New York, when it goes to the appeals court, everything is going to be dropped on the condition that he did so much wrong in court? And then why would you say Pam Bondi, a very strong woman, is going to be politicized? They're going to take the political out of the government that Biden put in it. I don't get this at all. Don't you think that Garland went after schools and parents? They went after January 6 people that were just walking around there. We all watched machines go down, election laws being changed. American people saw it. That's why they were mad. It had nothing to do with Trump. And you people are sitting on there talking about that he's going to weaponize the departments. He's not. You did. The Democrats did. And you're a hardcore Democrat. I get it. You're going to come up with some response.
Okay, well, we'll let him come up with the response then, Bob. Go ahead.
Well, I would say that Trump's conviction in New York was he was convicted on those counts by a jury of Americans who heard the evidence and made the decision against him. I think that our conclusion that Trump and Bondi, people like Kash Patel, are going to weaponize the federal government to take retribution on Trump's political opponents and personal enemies is based on things he has said and things they have said. They have talked about going after the mainstream media. They have talked about going after lawyers who are doing their job to investigate wrongdoing by President Trump. Steve Bannon, talks about Old Testament retribution. I think, the American people, polls suggest that the American people are not fond of the idea of massive pardons of the people who attacked the Capitol on January 6th, people who attacked police officers. So we'll see. There's been conflicting word from Trump and his allies about just how many of those people he's going to pardon. But those pardons send a signal about the rule of law, again, and his valuing of personal loyalty to him over the Constitution.
Since you mentioned Kash Patel, does the organization share concerns about him as similar to Pam Bondi?
Absolutely. We are also opposing Kash Patel's confirmation as FBI director. He has very explicitly talked about going after Trump's opponents. I think, it seems like he's very eager to turn the FBI into a weapon that Trump can use against his opponents. Patel published a book called Government Gangsters, which is sort of a hit list of people he wants to see punished, including some of those Republicans that I mentioned who stood up to Trump and were not willing to go along with his scheme to stay in power after he lost the election. Last year at the Conservative Political Action Conference, Kash Patel told the audience that the mainstream media is the most powerful enemy the United States has ever seen. Now think about that. The media as the most powerful enemy the United States has ever seen. That says something about his mindset. It says why we think that he and the administration pose a real threat to freedom of the press, which is core to our democracy. We have a lot of concerns about Kash Patel being named FBI director.
Conversation with Peter Montgomery of People for the American Way. This is Lois. Lois is in Pennsylvania, Democrats line.
Yeah, thank you very much. Obviously, Bondi has been his personal attorney, and I expect she will be his personal attorney when she's in the Justice Department. What I'd like to ask you is, he has said, as you noted, that Trump wants to prosecute the media. How would the Justice Department actually do that for him, and what could be done to stop it if she in fact is confirmed?
Well, I think there's a number of ways that they could go after the media. They could target individual reporters. Could order the Justice Department to target reporters who've been critical of him. Could make claims about leaks. He could file. They could go after them civilly and criminally. There's a lot of ways that they could turn the fire of the Justice Department on individual reporters. Project 2025, the plan for the administration put together by the Heritage Foundation and its allies, also envisioned doing away with the independence of agencies like the Federal Communications Commission. Trump has talked about taking away broadcast licenses for networks whose news coverage of him he didn't like. So that is another real threat to freedom of the press that we've heard out of Trump and his allies, and another reason that we're concerned about not having any guardrails in place. One of their reasons for wanting to do mass firing of professional civil servants is that they want to get rid of the guardrails and the checks and balances and people who might resist illegal actions.
CBS has part of her opening statement in which she says part of her job that she sees it as an overriding objective, quote, to return the Department of Justice to its core mission, vowing to get the department, quote, back to basics, prosecuting violent crime and gang activity, stopping child predators and drug traffickers, protecting our nation from terrorists and other foreign threats, and addressing the overwhelming crisis at the border.
We'll see. We'll see if that's what she really does. I think the Justice Department has always been working on those things. And I think Trump has a much broader agenda.
This is from James. James is in Atlanta. James, you're on with our guest on our independent line. Hi.
Good morning. Can you guys hear me?
You can. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say that real quick. I mean, to be honest, I don't really agree with this Pam Bondi pick at all, to be honest. I mean, this is the worst pick, I think, since when Bush was in office back in the early 2000s. I mean, we all know how that ended with Bush. You know, he doesn't care about black people. But to be honest, I'm really surprised, to be honest. I mean, I'm actually disappointed. I mean, I was surprised that he chose Bondi. I was thinking he might choose someone like Howard Stern.
That's James there, and a prank call to boot. When it comes to the things that you're worried about, I don't know how to put this. How much of it is based, I guess, from what you said before, but how much is hypothetical in nature as far as what could happen should she become the Attorney General?
Well, in some ways, it's all hypothetical because we don't know what they'll do until they actually take power. But we know that they have a whole lot of executive orders planned for day one, for the first week, for the first month. There's an aggressive plan to remake the federal government to align with Trump's vision. And unfortunately, some of that I think is going to be, really harmful policies toward a lot of different groups of people. And it's also going to be using the Justice Department and the FBI for him to take personal retribution against people he sees as his enemies, whether it's political opponents, whether it's the mainstream media, or whether it's civil servants in the Justice Department and other government agencies that have been doing their jobs. And we don't know how wide they're going to do the mass firings they have threatened to do so that they can replace professional employees with political loyalists. But that's all something that we'll be looking at. And I will say that there is a broad coalition. I mean, we're proud to be part of a broad coalition of civil society organizations that are, see what's coming and are preparing for it. And so I think there will be an energetic resistance to the worst of what the Trump administration tries to do.
The focus is on Pam Bondi today, but how would you rate the tenure of Merrick Garland as Attorney General?
I'm not an expert on that. I would say I'll take a pass on that one. I haven't given a lot of thought to that.
Terry is up next. Terry joins us from Minnesota, Republican line. Hi there.
Hi. See, Peter, you complained about the potential pardons by Trump. You didn't mention Biden's pardons. I'm curious. Your deal of, Trump's going to nominate people loyal to him and try to put in place his policies. I think that the American people voted for those. Are you opposed to the American people's representative doing what they asked them to do? I think it's clear. You're still fighting the election. It's over. Talk about the media and whether, they're going to attack the media. What is it? 15% of the public trust the media right now? I mean, there is a problem with the media. You know what? They have to begin by stop having the unnamed sources, the half stories. They become an advocacy for one side or the other. And the American people see it and no longer listen. I'm sorry, but your ideas and that side of the idea, the American people in the election pretty much flushed it down the toilet, and you're diving in after trying to reclaim it.
Okay, Terry, we'll leave it there. You make your point.
I would say, we recognize that Trump won the election. And like Trump, we're not trying to overturn the results of the election. And so part of what that means is that Trump gets to name people to run the agencies. It means he gets to name people to the federal bench as federal judges. And we're very concerned about the people he's going to put on the bench and the people he's going to put in the agencies. I will say that this process we're talking about today, the Senate confirmation process, is part of the Constitution. It's not, refighting the election. It's saying that, yes, Trump won, but he still has to abide by the Constitution. And the people that he puts in office have to abide by the Constitution. And we have not given up our rights as American citizens to raise alarms when we think he's doing something illegal or just when he thinks he's doing something harmful with the policies that are pursuing. So I don't know if you're suggesting that people who oppose Trump should just throw up their hands and walk away, but we're not going to walk away. And I think a lot of Americans are not going to walk away from advocating for what we believe in and for an America that reflects our values.
You and your other groups, if Pam Bondi does become the Attorney General, is there another step as far as reacting to decisions she may make legally or otherwise?
I think there's a whole range of options for once decisions start being made, once policies start being put in place. We're going to look at them. Are there opportunities to challenge them legally? Are they breaking the law? Are they violating rules about rules of federal procedure, about rulemaking? So there'll be a lot of, and certainly then, we will mobilize public opinion to the degree we can. We'll lobby members of Congress to fulfill their oversight responsibilities, which the Constitution also gives them. So there's going to be a lot of energetic back and forth once Trump takes power, and he's going to move aggressively, and I think people will respond as intensely as we can.
Scott in Vermont, Democrats line. Scott, we're running out of time. Go ahead with your question or comment. Scott in Vermont, go ahead, please.
Hello.
We're running out of time. Go ahead, please.
Oh, yes, I just wanted to comment on what the guest just said, how he said that everything that he's saying about Pam Bondi is hypothetical. His whole case is hypothetical. It's in his fever dream. Also, when is he going to realize that the progressive movement is over? It was a nationwide rejection of far-left policies this last election. I live in Vermont. They flipped 18 seats red. They no longer have a supermajority.
Okay. Sorry about that, Paul. I apologize. Final thoughts from you, sir.
I just say the Trump administration is raising a lot of concerns about the rule of law, about the policies that are harmful. The Senate confirmation process for Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, we should get a lot of important questions asked. We will be able to evaluate the answers. Senators will be able to evaluate the answers. And we will still have the responsibility as Americans, I think, the duty as Americans, to advocate for what we believe in, even once they're in power and once they're starting to make decisions.
People4.org, the website for People for the American Way. Peter Montgomery serving as their research director. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Again, thank you for joining us today. That's it for our program as we leave you now to the start of this hearing with Pam Bondi. People getting in place. This hearing set to start momentarily.